Officer Ben thought it was just another exhausting shift ending like any other. Nothing seemed out of place. Then his K-9 partner, Max, froze in the doorway of their own home, body tensing in a way Ben had seen 100 times before. Not during a playful greeting, not from excitement at being home, but from detecting danger. The German Shepherd's trained alert signal, the one reserved for criminals, for hidden threats, for suspects in the shadows. Nobody would expect that signal here. Nobody would think a decorated police dog would use his professional training inside his handler's quiet suburban house. Max's ears pinned back, his muscles coiled, and then without warning, he released a low, guttural growl that made Ben's blood run cold. "Max, what is it, boy?" Ben asked, his hand instinctively moving to his belt. Officer Ben tried to call him off, but Max refused to back down. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. Within seconds, the peaceful evening turned into a scene of confrontation, betrayal, and rage. What was Max trying to tell him? Why did the police dog recognize a threat in the one place Ben thought was safe? Stay with us, because what the K-9 detected and what Ben discovered hidden in his bedroom would shatter his world in ways no street criminal ever could. Before we start, make sure to hit like and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The house felt unusually quiet that evening. Golden light from the setting sun filtered through half-drawn curtains, casting long shadows across the living room furniture, the soft hum of the refrigerator blending with the distant sound of a neighbor's lawnmower, and the gentle click of Max's nails on the hardwood floor as they stepped inside. Nothing about this place hinted that Ben's entire life was moments away from collapsing. Officer Ben closed the door behind him, his uniform still creased from 12 hours on patrol. His K-9 partner, Max, walked beside him as always, their partnership forged through years of trust on the most dangerous streets in the city. Their presence in this home should have meant safety. Ben had imagined coming home to this exact moment 1,000 times during his shift, picturing his wife Mary's smile, maybe dinner on the stove, the comfort of normalcy after another day of chaos. "Long day, huh, buddy?" Ben murmured, reaching down to unclip Max's leash. But Max didn't respond the way he usually did. Instead, he stopped moving entirely, his tail dropping from its casual sway, ears twitching forward with laser focus. The German Shepherd's amber eyes locked onto something Ben couldn't see yet, scanning the hallway, the air, every shadow with an intensity that made Ben's stomach tighten. Then Ben noticed Mary. She stood in the kitchen doorway, but something was off. Her hair looked hastily fixed, her expression too bright, too forced. The house felt too still, like someone had pressed pause on a scene that should have been moving naturally. Ben had interrogated enough suspects to recognize the body language of someone hiding something. "Hey, you're home early," Mary said, her voice climbing half an octave too high. "I wasn't expecting you for another hour." Ben opened his mouth to respond, but Max's low growl cut through the air like a blade. It was subtle at first, barely audible. But Ben had heard that sound before. In drug dens, outside robbery scenes, right before finding armed suspects hiding in closets. His hand instinctively moved toward his radio. "Max, what've you got?" The dog's body went rigid, every muscle tensing as his nose lifted, processing scents invisible to human detection. Then Max moved with purpose, bypassing Mary entirely, heading straight down the hallway toward the bedroom. Not the casual trot of a pet going to his favorite spot. The focused, determined stride of a working K-9 who'd just caught a scent. Ben's pulse quickened. Max never gave false alerts. Never. In 6 years together, that dog had never been wrong. "Ben, wait," Mary called out, stepping forward, her hand reaching toward his arm. "He probably just smells something from earlier. I had a repairman here, and..." But Ben wasn't listening anymore, because Max had stopped at the bedroom door, and his trained alert bark shattered the quiet house like an explosion. Sharp, repetitive, urgent, the same bark that had saved Ben's life in a gang hideout 2 years ago. The same bark that found a missing child buried under debris. The same bark that meant one thing and one thing only. Suspect located. Ben's mind went blank. His training kicked in before his emotions could catch up. He moved past Mary's grabbing hands, following his partner down the hall, his heart hammering against his ribs. Max stood planted in front of the bedroom closet, his entire body pointing like an arrow, tail stiff, eyes unblinking, delivering bark after bark with mechanical precision. The closet door. Ben's hand closed around the handle, and in that split second before pulling it open, he knew. Deep in his gut, in that place where instinct lives, he knew his life was about to change forever. Max had found the truth, and the truth was hiding in his bedroom closet. Ben's body felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds as he pushed through the front door. Every muscle ached from the double shift, his uniform shirt sticking to his back with dried sweat, the weight of his duty belt digging into his hips like it had been grinding there for days instead of hours. All he wanted was a hot shower, maybe some leftover pizza, and the couch. Just the couch and silence, and nothing that required him to think or react or be Officer Ben anymore. Max padded in behind him, tongue lolling, but even the dog looked beat. They'd processed 2 domestic disturbance calls, broken up a fight outside a bar, and spent 3 hours searching a warehouse for a robbery suspect who turned out to be long gone. Routine work. Exhausting work. The kind that made home feel like a sanctuary. Except the moment Ben stepped into the living room, something felt wrong. The house was too quiet. Not peaceful quiet. Not the comfortable silence of an evening winding down. This was the kind of quiet that made his cop instincts prickle. Like walking into an apartment where the door's been left open and you know someone's inside but can't see them yet. The air felt thick, charged with something he couldn't name. "Mary?" he called out, setting his keys on the entry table. She appeared from the kitchen doorway so quickly it made him flinch. Too quickly. Like she'd been standing there, waiting, listening for the sound of his car in the driveway, timing her entrance. Her smile was bright, almost aggressive in its cheerfulness, but her eyes were darting, unfocused, landing on him, and then bouncing away to Max, to the window, to the floor. "You're home," she said, and Ben noticed her hand smoothing down her blouse repeatedly, a nervous gesture he'd never seen before. Her hair looked wrong too, like she'd run her fingers through it too many times, or maybe fixed it in a hurry. One side tucked behind her ear, the other hanging loose. "Yeah," Ben said slowly, studying her face. "Long shift. You okay?" "Me? Fine. Totally fine." She laughed, and it came out too loud, too sharp. "Why wouldn't I be fine? I'm just surprised you're home so early. I thought you said midnight." "It's 11:15, Mary. That's not early." She blinked rapidly, wrapping her arms around herself, despite the warmth of the house. "Right. Of course. I just lost track of time." Max's ears pricked forward, his casual post-shift demeanor evaporating as he focused on Mary with an intensity that made Ben's chest tighten. The dog took 2 steps toward the hallway, nose working the air, and Ben felt his exhaustion drain away, replaced by something cold and alert. The house wasn't just quiet. It was holding its breath, and Mary was blocking the hallway to their bedroom, her body angled like a barrier, her fingers twisting the hem of her blouse into knots. It happened in the space of a single heartbeat. Max went from curious to combat-ready so fast that Ben almost didn't process the transition. 1 second, the German Shepherd was sniffing the air with mild interest. The next, his entire body locked into a position. Ben had seen countless times on the street, but never, ever in his own home. The dog's shoulders dropped low, his head extending forward on a rigid neck. His ears pinned flat against his skull, swiveling independently like radar dishes zeroing in on a target. The muscles along his back bunched and coiled beneath his dark fur, every fiber of his body vibrating with controlled tension. His tail went absolutely still, no longer the casual sway of a pet, but the frozen warning of a predator. Then came the growl, low, guttural. A sound that came from somewhere deep in Max's chest and rolled out like distant thunder. It was the growl that preceded the bite, the growl that meant Max had detected something dangerous, something wrong, something that needed to be neutralized immediately. Ben's training kicked in before his mind could fully catch up. His hand dropped instinctively to his empty holster. He'd locked his service weapon in the car safe like always, and his body shifted into a defensive stance. But this wasn't a dark alley or a raid. This was his living room. His home. The place where Max was supposed to relax, to be off duty. To be just a dog. "Max, what is it?" Ben's voice came out sharp. Professional. The same tone he used in the field. The dog didn't acknowledge him. Max's amber eyes had locked onto something down the hallway, past Mary's trembling form, toward the bedroom. His nose worked frantically, pulling in air in short, rapid bursts, processing scents with the precision of a trained detection canine. Then his lips curled back just slightly, exposing the edge of white teeth, and he released another growl. This one, more insistent. Ben had seen Max alert on contraband, on weapons, on suspects hiding in crawl spaces and behind false walls. The dog had a different posture for each. Curious for drugs, aggressive for weapons, focused for people. This was the people alert, the suspect alert, but there were no suspects here. Just Mary, just home. "Ben, please," Mary said, her voice cracking. She took a step sideways, trying to place herself more firmly between Max and the hallway. "He's probably just reacting to me being nervous. Dogs can sense that, right? You've told me that before." Ben barely heard her. His eyes were fixed on Max, watching the dog's body language with the intensity of someone reading a life or death message. Max's front paws were planted wide, his weight shifting forward onto his toes, ready to launch. His breathing had changed, coming faster now, more urgent. Then Max did something that made Ben's blood turn to ice. The dog barked. Not the happy bark of greeting, not the playful bark of wanting attention. The sharp, repetitive, mechanical bark that meant only one thing in their 6 years together. Target acquired, suspect located, officer assistance required. Max had found someone in Ben's house, and that someone was hiding. Max lunged forward before Ben could give the command. The German Shepherd surged toward the hallway with single-minded purpose, his claws scrabbling for purchase on the hardwood floor, every ounce of his 80-pound frame driving toward the bedroom. Ben had seen that look before, that laser-focused intensity that blotted out everything else. Max was locked on target, and nothing short of a direct command would stop him now. "No." Mary's voice came out as a strangled cry. She threw herself sideways, arms outstretched, trying to block Max's path. "Ben, stop him. Please." But Max was already past her, his powerful shoulders brushing her aside like she weighed nothing. She stumbled, catching herself against the wall, and then she was moving again, this time grabbing for Ben's arm with both hands. "Ben, wait. You don't understand." He shook her off without looking at her, his eyes tracking Max's movement down the hallway. 6 years of partnership had built an instinct deeper than thought, stronger than doubt. When Max alerted, Ben followed. Always. No exceptions. That single rule had saved his life more times than he could count. "Mary, get back." His voice came out flat, professional, the tone he used with civilians at crime scenes, not husband to wife, officer to bystander. "Please, just listen to me for 1 second." She grabbed his arm again, harder this time, her nails digging into his uniform sleeve. "It's not what you think. I can explain. Just give me a chance to." Ben pulled away and kept walking. Each step down the hallway felt mechanical, like his body was moving on autopilot while his mind struggled to process what was happening. Mary's voice had taken on a desperate, pleading quality he'd never heard before. The sound of someone caught, someone guilty. Max had stopped at the bedroom door, his body rigid, nose pressed to the gap at the bottom. His tail was completely still, his ears forward and alert. Then he sat, sharp and immediate, haunches hitting the floor with practiced precision. It was the final confirmation signal, the one that meant subject, located, positive identification, waiting for handler. "Ben, please." Mary was right behind him now, her hands clutching at his shoulders, trying to physically turn him around. "Don't go in there. Let's just talk. Okay?" Let's go outside and talk, and I'll tell you everything. He reached the bedroom door, and Mary's composure shattered completely. She grabbed his wrist with both hands, pulling with all her strength, her voice breaking into sobs. Ben, I'm begging you, please, please don't open that door. Max looked up at Ben, amber eyes calm and certain, waiting for permission to do what he was trained to do. The dog's message was crystal clear. The threat is behind this door. Partner, and I've done my job. Now, you do yours. Ben's hand closed around the doorknob. Mary's desperate, "No," echoed down the hallway as he pushed the door open and stepped inside. The bedroom looked normal. Too normal. The bed was made, corners tucked with military precision that Mary never bothered with. The curtains were drawn tight against the evening light. A candle sat on the dresser, recently extinguished, a thin ribbon of smoke still curling from the blackened wick. The air smelled wrong cologne that wasn't his, sweat that wasn't hers, and underneath it all, the unmistakable scent of fear. Max didn't pause to process the scene. He crossed the room in 3 powerful strides and stopped dead in front of the closet door, his body coiling like a spring. Then he barked. Sharp, loud, aggressive. The bark that meant hostile subject, immediate threat, prepare for contact. Ben's heart hammered against his ribs so hard he thought it might crack through. His hands were shaking, not from fear, from something worse, from the terrible, dawning certainty that his entire life had been a lie. Ben, Mary's voice came from behind him, small and broken. She'd followed him into the bedroom, standing in the doorway like a ghost. Please, let me explain before you. Is someone in there? His voice didn't sound like his own. It came out cold, detached, the voice of a cop interrogating a suspect. Mary, is someone in there? She didn't answer. She just stood there, with tears streaming down her face, her arms wrapped around herself, shaking her head slowly, like she could somehow rewind time. Undo this moment. Make it all disappear. Max barked again, more insistent this time, his front paws dancing with barely contained energy. The dog was waiting for the command, waiting for Ben to give him permission to do what every fiber of his training demanded. Breach, engage, neutralize the threat. Ben took a step toward the closet, then another. His hand reached out, fingers hovering inches from the handle, and suddenly he couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Because opening this door meant confirming what he already knew. It meant watching his marriage explode in real time. It meant facing a truth that would change everything. Who is it? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. He still hadn't looked at Mary, couldn't look at her. Who's in my closet, Mary? Who's hiding in my house? Ben, I'm sorry. Who is it? The roar tore out of him, echoing off the walls, and Mary flinched like he'd struck her. Someone I work with, she whispered. It just happened, I didn't mean for it to. Max's bark cut her off. One final, definitive alert that said everything words couldn't. Your partner has done his job. The suspect is confirmed. Now, you have a choice to make. Ben's hand closed around the closet handle, cold metal against his sweating palm. Behind that door was the end of everything he'd built. Every promise, every plan, every belief that his home was a sanctuary. Step back, Mary, he said quietly, and then he yanked the door open. The man tumbled out, like something that had been shoved into too small a space and compressed under pressure. He spilled onto the bedroom floor, in a tangle of bare limbs and panic, catching himself on his hands, his chest heaving with rapid, terrified breaths. He was shirtless, completely shirtless. A white towel was clutched in one fist, his hair damp and disheveled like he'd hastily tried to make himself presentable. Sweatpants hung low on his hips. No shoes. No socks. The kind of undressed that only meant one thing. For a frozen moment, nobody moved. Ben stared down at the man on his bedroom floor, his brain trying to process what his eyes were showing him. This wasn't some stranger. This was a person Mary knew, someone she'd brought into their home, into their bedroom. Someone who'd been hiding, actually hiding in their closet, like a teenage boy caught by an angry father. The man looked up, his eyes wild with fear, and recognition hit Ben like a fist to the gut. He'd seen this face before. Mary's office, Christmas party. The summer barbecue. A colleague, she'd said. Just a friend from work. Just a friend. The rage came so fast and so complete that Ben's vision actually narrowed, the edges of the room going dark, his entire world condensing down to the half-naked man scrambling backward across his floor. It wasn't a slow burn or a rising heat. It was instant, overwhelming, a white-hot explosion that detonated in his chest and radiated outward until every nerve ending in his body was screaming for violence. His hands balled into fists so tight his knuckles cracked. His jaw clenched hard enough to make his teeth ache. 6 years on the force had taught him control, had trained him to manage adrenaline and channel anger into procedure and protocol. All of that evaporated in a single heartbeat. Ben, please. Mary's voice came from somewhere behind him, but it sounded distant, meaningless, like words in a language he no longer understood. The man held up his hands in surrender, his voice coming out in a pathetic stammer. Look, man, I'm sorry, okay? I'm so sorry. This is a huge mistake. Get up. Ben's voice was dead calm, which somehow made it more terrifying than if he'd been screaming. Get up? Max sensed the shift in his handler immediately. The dog's growl deepened, his body coiling tighter, waiting for the command that his training told him was coming. The command to engage, to attack, to do what police dogs did to fleeing suspects. The man staggered to his feet, the towel falling from his grip, his eyes darting between Ben and the bedroom door like a trapped animal calculating escape routes. He was younger than Ben, fitter, probably thought he could make it if he ran. Ben saw the decision forming in the man's eyes before his body moved. Don't, Ben said quietly. The man bolted. He moved like his life depended on it, because in that moment, staring into Ben's eyes, he genuinely believed it did. The man shoved past Ben with desperate strength, his shoulder connecting hard enough to knock Ben off balance. He careened through the bedroom doorway, nearly tripping over his own bare feet, arms windmilling as he fought for balance. Mary screamed something, reaching out to grab him, but he was already past her, sprinting down the hallway with the raw panic of prey fleeing a predator. Ben's shock lasted exactly half a second. Then instinct took over. Not cop instinct, not training. Something deeper and more primal. He launched himself after the man, his boots thundering on the hardwood, adrenaline flooding his system so completely that he barely felt his body moving. The man hit the living room at full speed, knocking over the entry table. Keys and mail scattered across the floor. He grabbed the doorknob, yanking it open so hard the door slammed against the wall, and then he was outside, barefoot and shirtless, running down the front walkway into the golden evening light. Ben burst through the door 3 seconds behind him, his hand instinctively reaching for his radio before remembering he was off duty. This wasn't a pursuit. This was his life falling apart in real time on his front lawn where all the neighbors could see. The man vaulted over the white picket fence that separated Ben's property from the sidewalk, his bare foot catching the top rail, nearly sending him sprawling. He recovered and kept running, his feet slapping against the concrete, heading toward the intersection at the end of the block. He was fast, younger legs, fear-driven speed, the kind of desperate velocity that came from pure survival instinct. But Ben had something the man didn't: 6 years of tactical training, daily physical conditioning, and a rage so absolute it felt like rocket fuel in his veins. More than that, Ben had Max. The German Shepherd exploded through the doorway behind his handler, reading the situation with the instant comprehension of a working K9. Subject fleeing. Handler in pursuit. Mission parameters. Clear. Ben's neighbors were outside. Mrs. Chen watering her roses. The Morrison kids riding bikes. Old Mr. Patterson checking his mailbox. All of them stopped mid-motion, frozen in place as they watched the surreal scene unfolding. A shirtless man, running barefoot down their quiet suburban street. Officer Ben, chasing behind him, still in full uniform, and Mary stumbling out onto the front porch in her disheveled clothes, mascara streaming down her face. The man looked back over his shoulder, his eyes wide with terror, and in that split second of distraction his foot caught a crack in the sidewalk. He stumbled but didn't fall, his arms pinwheeling as he fought to maintain momentum. Ben's voice cut through the evening air, carrying the absolute authority of 6 years on the force, the command he'd given 1,000 times to his partner. "Max, get him." The command hung in the air for one crystalline moment, and then Max became something else entirely. The friendly family dog, the loyal companion, the patient partner, all of that vanished. What remained was 80 pounds of pure predatory focus, a machine built for pursuit and capture. Every muscle and sinew working in perfect synchronization toward a single objective: apprehend the target. Max launched himself forward with explosive power, his paws barely seeming to touch the ground as he accelerated past Ben in a blur of dark fur and bared teeth. The German Shepherd moved like liquid violence, closing the distance between himself and the fleeing man with terrifying speed. 20 yards. 15. 10. The man heard the dog coming, impossible not to, with Max's growl building into a continuous, aggressive snarl, and his panic ratcheted up another level. He cut left, trying to use a parked car as an obstacle, his bare feet slipping on the grass strip between sidewalk and street. It bought him maybe 2 seconds. Max adjusted his trajectory without breaking stride, his training allowing him to read the suspect's movement and counter it instinctively. The dog cut the angle, taking the optimal pursuit path, the one that would intersect with the target in the shortest possible time. Ben ran behind them, his lungs burning, his uniform restricting his movement. But he couldn't stop. Wouldn't stop. This wasn't about catching the man anymore. This was about watching his life splinter into before and after, about seeing 6 years of marriage reduced to a barefoot chase through his neighborhood, while everyone he knew watched from their front lawns. The Morrison kids had dropped their bikes in the middle of the street. Mrs. Chen stood with her hose still running, water pooling around her feet. Mr. Patterson had his phone out, probably calling 911. Probably thinking there was some kind of actual crime happening instead of just Ben's entire world burning down. The man made it to the intersection and tried to cut right, heading toward the park at the end of Oak Street. His chest was heaving, his breathing ragged, his bare feet bleeding from the rough concrete. He was slowing down, exhaustion and fear combining to sap his strength. Max wasn't slowing down at all. The gap closed to 5 yards, then 3. The man could hear the dog's paws hammering the pavement behind him, the savage growl that promised pain if he didn't stop, and his terror finally overrode his flight instinct. He looked back. It was the mistake Max had been waiting for. The German Shepherd launched himself through the air in a perfect tackle, 70-plus pounds of trained K9 hitting the man's center mass, driving him forward and down. They went sprawling across someone's perfectly manicured lawn, the man's scream cutting through the quiet evening as Max's jaws clamped onto his arm. The man hit the ground hard, his shoulder taking the brunt of the impact, Max's weight pinning him face down in the grass. The dog's jaws hadn't broken skin, trained bite, controlled pressure, just enough force to immobilize without causing serious injury. But the message was unmistakable. You're caught. Stay down. Don't move. Get it off. Get it off. The man's voice came out in a high-pitched shriek, his free hand slapping uselessly at Max's muscled shoulder. Please, I'm not moving, I'm not, please, Max growled. A deep rumble that vibrated through his chest into the man's trapped arm, and applied just slightly more pressure. Not enough to injure, just enough to communicate. I'm in control now, and struggling will only make this worse. Ben reached them 10 seconds later, his breath coming in ragged gasps, his heart hammering so hard it felt like it might explode. He stood over the scene, this pathetic, humiliating tableau on the Hendersons' front lawn, and felt something cold and final settle in his chest, where the rage had been burning moments before. The man was sobbing now, his face pressed into the grass, his body shaking. Max held him there with professional efficiency, waiting for his handler's next command, amber eyes flicking up to Ben with the calm certainty of a job well done. "Good boy, Max," Ben said quietly. "Hold." The sound of running feet made him turn. Mary was sprinting down the sidewalk, barefoot like her lover, her silk nightgown a slip really, practically see-through in the golden evening light, flowing around her legs. Her hair was wild, her face a mess of tears and smeared makeup. She looked desperate, destroyed, absolutely frantic. "Ben, please." She reached them, stumbling to a stop, her hands reaching out like she might physically pull him away from the scene. "Let him go. Just let him go, and we can talk about this." Ben stared at her like she was a stranger. This woman in her flimsy nightgown, pleading for another man's safety, asking him to just let this all slide. How long? He wanted to ask. How many times? How many lies? "Ma'am, step back," he said. And the formal address hit her like a slap. "Ben, don't do this, please. I made a mistake. I know I did. But we can fix this. Step back," he repeated, his voice completely empty. The neighbors had gathered now, at least a dozen of them, maintaining a respectful distance but watching every moment of his humiliation. The Morrison kids, Mrs. Chen, Mr. Patterson, the Hendersons standing in their own doorway, watching this domestic nightmare unfold on their front lawn. Mary dropped to her knees on the sidewalk, her nightgown pooling around her, and reached for Ben's hand. "Please. I love you. I'm so sorry. But I love you." Ben looked down at her, then at the man Max had pinned, then back at his wife, kneeling in her underwear in the middle of their street, and he felt absolutely nothing. Ben crouched down beside Max, his hand resting gently on the dog's powerful shoulders. The German shepherd's muscles were still coiled, ready to respond to any movement from the pinned man, but his eyes tracked to Ben with absolute trust and attention. "Release," Ben said quietly. Max opened his jaws immediately, backing off 2 steps while maintaining his focus on the suspect. The man rolled onto his side, cradling his arm, sobbing with relief and shame. Ben didn't look at him, didn't acknowledge his existence beyond the professional detachment of a cop who'd just witnessed an apprehension. "Good boy, Max," Ben said, his voice soft, meant only for his partner's ears. His hand moved to scratch behind Max's ears, that spot the dog loved. And Max's tail gave a single, satisfied wag. "You did good. You found the truth." The words hung in the air, simple and devastating. Because that's what Max had done, wasn't it? No lies, no deception. Just pure, loyal instinct, recognizing danger and protecting his partner the only way he knew how. 6 years together, and Max had never once let him down. "Ben, please, look at me," Mary begged from behind him, her voice breaking. "We need to talk about this. We need to." He stood up, his movements slow and deliberate, and turned to face her. Not because she deserved his attention, but because he needed to see her one last time. Needed to memorize this moment. The woman he'd married, kneeling on concrete in her nightgown, crying for a marriage that had died the moment Max alerted in their living room. "There's nothing to talk about," Ben said simply. "Yes, there is. Ben, I made a mistake. I know that. But people make mistakes, and I trusted you." His voice was quiet, almost conversational, which somehow made it cut deeper than shouting would have. 6 years, Mary. I gave you 6 years of trust, and you brought him into our home, into our bed. She opened her mouth, closed it, tears streaming down her face. Ben looked at the man, still lying on the Hendersons' lawn, then at the neighbors pretending not to stare, then back at Mary. The life they'd built together was scattered across this street like the contents of that overturned entry table. Broken, irretrievable. "Max," he said, turning away from her. The dog was at his side instantly, falling into perfect heel position, his body pressed lightly against Ben's leg. Partners. The way they'd always been. The way they'd always be. "Ben, wait." Mary struggled to her feet, reaching for him. "Where are you going? You can't just leave." But he could. He absolutely could. Ben walked back toward their house. His house now, not theirs. Never theirs again, with Max trotting faithfully beside him. He didn't look back. Didn't need to. Behind him, Mary's sobs echoed down the street, mixing with the whispered conversations of neighbors and the distant wail of approaching sirens someone had probably called. His hand dropped to rest on Max's head as they walked, and the dog looked up at him with those amber eyes that had never lied, never betrayed, never been anything but absolutely loyal. "Just you and me now, boy," Ben whispered. Max's tail wagged once in agreement. It was enough. If you liked this video and want to see more just like it, then make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And I'm genuinely curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far these incredible stories reach.